But this weekend, we have in Toronto Fan Expo, which is our Comic-Con, and Frank Miller is going to be here, who, of course, wrote the last couple of RoboCops.
Oh, that's nice. Awesome. Do you want to take a camera and a green screen and get an interview for us?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, and welcome to My Summer Lair, which for this episode is located in Old Detroit. I'm your host, Sammy. Unlike Ed 209, I can go up and down the stairs, Younan. This episode is a magical journey into the world of steel, science, and satire. Oh yes! We're talking about RoboCop, the iconic 1987 film that forever changed the landscape of science fiction and action cinema. Look, let's be honest, RoboCop is a dumb premise, executed to perfection. As you know, the metallic marvel was born when Officer Alex Murphy was savagely murdered on duty. His death prompted the creation of RoboCop, the latest omni-consumer product, OCP for fun. You gotta have an evil corporation for science fiction goodness, right? Who are showcasing their latest cold-blooded innovation. By the end of the movie, RoboCop has waged a one-man war on crime that Batman would envy, and unlike Batman, he did it while slowly regaining his humanity. Now, obviously I glossed over a lot in that TV guide recap. Cue the RoboCop experts who have crafted RoboDoc, the creation of RoboCop, now streaming on Screambox. So say yo and sup to Eastwood Allen, Chris Griffiths, and Gary Smart, who are your tour guides through Detroit's gritty streets. Chris and Eastwood are the co-directors of RoboDoc, the creation of RoboCop, and Gary is the producer. As I said, it's streaming right now on Screambox. Together, they're as formidable as Boddicker's gang. These three gents get intimate with RoboCop. Their documentary RoboDoc is a 4-parter. It delves deep into the minds behind the creation of this special cinematic character. From actors ranging from Mr. Kenny, remember the guy that got shot by Ed 209? Mr. Kenny. Yeah, he's in the doc. To Peter Weller, to the director Paul Verhoeven, and so much more. RoboDoc, the creation of RoboCop, is now streaming on Screambox, and I highly, highly recommend it. But before you check it out, stay with me to hear some wild behind-the-scenes RoboCop revelations, including the time Steven Seagal auditioned for RoboCop. No, I would not buy that for $1.
Sound, the final frontier. My Summer Lair is an enterprise, a pop culture voyage with a continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new creators and celebrate established producers, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now here is your host, Sammy Younan.
Before we kind of talk about RoboCop, though, since there are 3 of you, I want audiences to hear each of your voices. So can you introduce yourself, share your RoboDoc role, and quote your favorite RoboCop line? So your name, what you did for RoboDoc, and your favorite RoboCop quote.
Why did you do this to us?
Chris is thinking of his quote. I can already see his eyes going. He's thinking of his quote. I'm Eastwood Allen. I'm the co-director, co-writer, and editor of RoboDoc. My favorite quote. Wow, what is my favorite quote? We're going to have to cut this down, aren't we? I know Chris is still thinking of his. I'm going to go with...
I'm going to Google it.
Gary's going to Google it. I'm going to go with... You're going to be a bad motherfucker.
Oh, yeah. All right. The OCP basically motto of RoboCop.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
All right, it's a good one.
Cool. Oh, so many to choose from, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Chris Griffiths, the co-director and co-writer of RoboDoc, the creation of RoboCop. I'm going to go my favorite line being, "Can you fly, Bobby?"
Okay, yes. Good old Clarence.
Don't do this to me. My name's Gary Smart. I'm the producer of RoboDoc. Now, it's hard for me because these two are super geeks on the film. My favourite character is Dick Jones, so if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. I just Googled that.
Okay.
So.
That's a good
I
confession.
can't believe Chris's was that short, to be honest. I thought Chris was going to recite a full scene.
We get the best of both worlds. The fastest technology has to offer onboard computer-assisted memory and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming. Yeah,
you got it wrong. You missed the line. Carry on.
I know. Yeah, I know. I'm just gonna keep going. Like, I'd buy that for $1, right? So,
Oh wow, that's obviously.
there you go. But I know, like, Paul Verhoeven is interviewed in RoboDoc, and I know you're talking to him obviously about RoboCop. But, and this is a very important but, was there any time off camera where you talked to him about his other sci-fi classic, Total Recall? Because that's another classic from the Dutch director.
I love Total Recall. I think the problem we had with Paul going in was very weird, and I'm sure we'll have to explain that in regards to the interview. But we got more time than we actually were supposed to have. He gave us a lot more time. But he was actually going out for a meal with the editor, Frank, I think it was, straight after. So kind of when we were done and we were way over time, we had to literally get hurried out of the house, really. So it was a whirlwind experience of getting Paul to sign posters for us, as well as chit chat really about our kind of process of filmmaking. That's how I remember it. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's right. He did touch on it where we were talking about Rob Bottin. He talked about Total Recall. He also, the week that the day that we interviewed him, that weekend before, he'd been to Arnold Schwarzenegger's birthday. So we were talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he touched on a little bit of obviously his work with him and being a great guy in Total Recall and getting him anything that he wanted as a director. Or would just go to Arnold and say, I need this, and Arnold would go make it happen because he had the clout on that production. But that was pretty much it. He talked a little bit about Starship Troopers, but yeah, Chris was asking Paul the questions, and it was very much me and Gary in the corner looking at our watch, going, we need to get as much as we can out of this man. But Paul was happy to just hang around, and we ended up going over by about 25 minutes, I think. And he was great. But yeah, the beginning of that interview was kind of odd because we met him at his house in Malibu. And it was Martine Verhoeven, his wife, who answered the door, who was lovely. She gave us all a load of like ice lollies to eat, which we were sort of dripping on the carpet when we walked in. It was all these like fruity ice lollies. And then we saw Paul Verhoeven in the kitchen and was waiting for him to acknowledge us and for us to say hello. We're a bunch of Brits, and we've come over to do this interview with you. And he basically glanced up from his newspaper and then gone back down, and myself, Chris, Gary was just like, oh god, the blood just went from our heads, and we were like, okay, we're going to be in for it now. And then we went and set up in his study downstairs. I remember he obviously had several levels to his house. We set up in his study, and then I don't know if you remember this, guys, but he went on his computer. He had an iMac set up. While we were setting up, Chris, you were setting up the cameras with our camera person, and then I glanced over to Paul, and he was on IMDb looking at the cast and crew, but he was looking at the RoboCop remake. Do you remember?
I remember gushing to him. I think that's the moment I felt a little bit easy, and I think he sort of took us on more was when we started sort of gushing a bit about why we love the film. We're not just here to do a job. We genuinely love this film. I mean, if I'd had more time, I would have loved to have told him what a massive impact Showgirls had on my childhood, but time didn't allow it. So that and Basic Instinct. But no, I mean, it was, I think you were saying you were looking at your watches. I remember looking at his watch because we were told we only had like an hour with him. And obviously he was built up as this character for us as well with all the other interviews, like, oh, he was a tyrant, oh, he was this and that. So when you finally meet him, you're like, oh shit, this is our turn. So Eastwood's story of him looking up at us, newspaper, and us going, hello, and then him just kind of going straight back down. You're like, oh fuck, this is going to be fun. Yes. And I think we were a little bit behind time, and I was just constantly looking at his wrist, his watch, as I was doing, having to look like upside down at it and try not to be obvious, and going like, shit, we've got like 3 minutes to go. But then the time just kept ticking and ticking and ticking. It's like, oh my god, we can actually see this interview through. We can see it we can ask every single answer questions we've got for him. So he was fantastic by the end.
I remember we got to Malibu early, didn't we, as well? And we were sitting in a little cafe or bar, and it was like shitting ourselves completely.
Didn't say a word.
Yeah. We didn't speak. We just sat there waiting, going, we've got half hour.
It's like one of those World War II films, isn't it? Where they're all just sort of waiting for the bombs start dropping and just no one says a word.
Yeah, but amazing experience.
So I want to continue on that thread of this amazing experience because, Christopher, I'll start with you, and then everyone can contribute their perspective. But you've collaborated on a number of like these kind of IP documentaries You're So Cool, Brewster, the story of Fright Night. Pennywise, the story of It. This is from 2021. Shout out to Tim Curry, of course. Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares, the Robert Englund story. And now RoboDoc. So, as I said, Chris, I'll start with you and then the rest of you guys can jump in. But what's your prime directive in crafting and like creating these type of IP docs like RoboDoc?
Serve the public trust of nerds. No, I think, well, I've, like many of the guys, the short of it is, brought up, absolute film fan from the get-go. I don't stop talking about films. I do quite like films. And I think for me, it was this is just a release. And you know what? If I'm going to talk about these films, I might as well do something with that knowledge and apply something. And I, to be honest, I just think it's just great to be able to celebrate all the things we love, from our childhood. And it's just nice to sort of unpack it as well. And in this particular case, I think it's almost just showcased, kind of like the reason why we think RoboCop's like one of, if not, from my personal opinion, greatest films ever made.
It's a fantastic movie, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me, I'd say.
I think we've always, from day one, right from the Leviathan days, always set out to basically not do fluff pieces, just to do, we're fans, at our core, we're fans of the films that we make documentaries on. That's why we've chosen those films. And we've always said we want to celebrate those movies and go deep dive into them, and also give fans more than experience as well, in terms of, and that's interviewing people who would never normally be interviewed. And we've always done that. We've always found the crapper loader, found the makeup assistant or the hairstylist, because these people have amazing stories and they're never given any credit at all. And some of our best stories sometimes come from the people who are just standing behind the camera. It's, the actors are great, but they have very, very selective time on set, very selective, obviously, role in terms of obviously their experience. Some people are there the whole entire shoot, and they've got so many stories and no one cares about those people. That's hence why we have 100 people interviewed in our projects. And it's down to the lads to obviously edit those people together. So yeah, deep dive's always been our mantra, always been, and as film fans and behind the scene fans, what do we want to see and what stories we want to hear, and obviously and celebrating these classic films.
Yeah, I think for us as well, like you think about RoboCop, you put that alongside maybe, Apocalypse Now, Aliens, Jaws, like films that are considered classics in their own rights, but the production of them was absolute, torrid times and frustrations. There were fights left, right and center. People, even you think about Coppola being suicidal, like there's so many stories like that, and RoboCop's another one of those. And for us, we wanted to uncover that. We knew from some of the earlier EPKs and the older retro documentaries on RoboCop that it was a tough shoot and it was hot and the suit was difficult and the director was demanding, but we wanted to dive a bit deeper on that stuff. And yeah, for us, like I personally am not a massive fan of documentaries who are just constantly tapping people on the back going, oh, it was amazing to work with that person, they were geniuses and they were so nice and lovely to work with. It's like, but what have we gained there? What have we got out of that? Like, and having a classic like RoboCop, the end result everyone's so familiar with, but the story of how they got to that end result, there's just so many like twists and arguments and just like bitterness on the set, and like the fact that it ended with an absolute iconic movie like that, and now people are happy to talk about it as well, since there's been a bit of distance, and be candid about it and super honest about it and drop people's names and be candid like that to us is gold. We're sat there rubbing our hands going, oh, I can't wait for people to hear this story. That's so much, that is just gold to us. So and obviously Chris and I idolize this film. We have done since being literally like 3 and 6 years old. So it was fun to meet those people involved.
That's an oddly weird, metric for like successful filmmaking. Like you mentioned a number of movies. Jaws was another one where things were not going well and Spielberg thought he was going to get fired and then he ends up making this classic. It's weird now because we get these articles that talk about like strife on the set or the director's gonna get fired or what, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds like a good movie. What I mean? Yeah. I get excited. I'm like, oh, all right, there's tension. All right, let's see. Like, when are you dropping?
It's that element of like blood, sweat, and tears, isn't it? I think but we don't look to go out and make these exploitative pieces. We're not there to sort of dig dirt and you know what I mean, backstab people. But it's getting to the truth of it. We never like to sort of sugarcoat these things. We had a little instance, I think, where there was debate on the set of our Pennywise documentary. Like, we probably shouldn't talk about how, no offense, but crap the spider turned out at the end. I was like, no, we do have to talk about that. And we have to hear the reasoning behind it, So the results speak for themselves with all these films. They turned out great, but let's find out what it took to kind of make them. I think it helps in a way showcase and build the appreciation of them like tenfold, really, when you realize like, holy shit, that's what you went through to make that. And I think it just sort of shows the level of dedication everyone had. They just might have not been all on the same page at the same time.
I think we've kind of experienced ourselves, not trying to compare obviously our work with anybody else's, but even making this project, I think one thing that, you look at films like you said, RoboCop, and my favorite film, Return of the Living Dead, same issues on set with Dan O'Bannon. I think out of chaos always comes creativity. And I think, you've got to be creative in chaos. And I think we've experienced that ourselves. When there's chaos, we've become more creative because we have to, you get your back to the wall. You've got to obviously, if you want to finish the project, you've got to be creative and get out of it. I think that's films like RoboCop and films like, Jaws and Return of the Living Dead. That's why they're special, because they, against all odds, they've achieved, that end goal and got that thing out. And most times it's gold, When something runs really smooth, it's going to be shit, basically, because people get complacent. People get complacent, man. If it's easy, it's not, it is. And if it's easy, it's not going to be good. If it's chaotic and you can get through it without killing each other, it's good. You're going to get gold at the end of it, no matter what. Because at the end of it, you appreciate it more at the end. And I think we've experienced that. You appreciate what you've done and what you've been through, and you can ignore, actually, as Eastwood said, you can get rose tinted years after. We're feeling this on we had arguments on the set of RoboDoc 7 years ago. We laugh about them now, but at the time, I wanted to kill Chris. But now it's rose tinted and we laugh about it.
I think I distinctly remember the one where I went, "Oh, fuck off, Gary," and I just heard you marching down the corridor, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm in trouble."
Don't mess with me. Creativity comes from chaos.
But that appreciation, and even now the way you guys are laughing after your argument, like, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but in RoboDoc, compared to your previous, IP docs, right? All the RoboCop actors are like laughing and smiling and telling stories. They're very upbeat and they're very proud of the work. It's not that like the actors in Pennywise, your previous documentary, were down or anything. But this one, you could feel like they were excited to talk about RoboCop and excited to tell stories. Am I wrong?
They were all
wrong. Well, I think, again, I'll give the lads credit now. I think it very comes from how the director approaches the subject. And I think the lads, because there was so much fanboys on this and they loved it and they were so excited that Ray Wise was there and, Verhoeven was there, that spewed out of them, really. So then the reaction was, and the lads knew their stuff. I think with Pennywise, our approach from that, maybe when we look respectively on it, it's a great doc, got great reviews, won the Fangoria documentary award.
That's right. Congratulations.
Thank you. I think we went into that very academically. I think we did. It was about the fear of clowns and the impact of Pennywise on society and film culture. And that's where when you look at the behind the scenes stuff we did with the actors, are laughing and joking, but they got very serious because it was very much let's talk about clown, chlorophobia, talk about the fear of spiders. This isn't like that. And same as Brewster wasn't like it as well.
I think it's reflective of the films themselves as well. Absolutely crazy. But I'm glad you noticed that, because I have to admit, watching it myself, every turn, each person comes on like, fuck, they come across so nice. Oh, he's having a great time. She's having a great time. Like they were, to be honest, I appreciate it all the more now watching it. At the time, I think you're just so in the zone about doing the interview, getting it done, and you might be a bit nervous. It's only afterwards you're like, holy shit, they really all gave 110%, doing their quotes and everything like that. And I think it's one of the things I relish in the most when we do these things. We're not doing this to make a buck. We're not doing this, because someone told us to. We're doing it because we love it. And I think that's what I've enjoyed with most of the interviews, especially on this one. I think we had it certainly with like Weller, where the first half an hour or so, it's that getting warmed up and okay, here we go. And it might be like one word answers. And then you just hit this point and you're like, fuck, this is a conversation now. This is not an interview.
Right.
And that's the thing I absolutely love, and I think by the end, Eastwood and I on the Weller interview, when we knew we'd buttered him up to a certain degree, we're like, should we ask him this question? Or should we ask him that one? Which we were way too scared to do at the start.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just what I really enjoy about these, is they're doing the back and forth, with these people.
It's almost like a
With
first
Weller
date,
as
too.
well.
So it's kind of like a first date, right? Where like you kind of just need a little bit of time to warm up and then kind of suss out the person's personality.
And I think the good thing we had on Eastwood to interrupt very quickly. The good thing we had on RoboCop as well was RoboDoc, because the studio we had a meeting area at the front of the studio, so we could, like, myself and Mikey and Adam could talk to the guests before they actually go meet Chris and Eastwood in the other room. So they sat there chatting, and then somebody would come out, and then they go, "Oh, I haven't seen you in 20 years," and then, "Oh, these guys are great in there. They know their stuff," and that really helped. So even to get sounds that the locations that we had, which we didn't have on Pennywise really as much, that made a massive difference, because it allowed people to get really comfortable, because the next guest would go, "They're good lads, actually. This isn't just a fluff place. This isn't just a little bonus feature. They know what they're talking about. They know more than I do." And I think that made people very comfortable then. Sorry.
Yeah. That production office was absolutely buzzing, and we had so much overlap of people seeing each other. I remember Chris and I telling you guys off outside, and then us getting told off because we told you to be quiet because you're having such a good time out there with all the cast and crew. And then just going back to Weller, so we interviewed Weller at the very end of production, and again, we were nervous going into it because we know Weller is super articulate and intense and intelligent, and we thought he's had enough talking about this film. Where are we going to go? And we'd done our research. We were on a call before we had the interview. Chris and I were going through sort of priority questions, your A, B, C category, if you like, and we got through that entire list. And then we talked about the sequel and everything. But we had the notes as well. We had the original production documents with us of his comments that he wrote in 1986 that he'd long forgotten. So I could recite to him, "Peter, back in 1986, you had this idea that Paul Verhoeven wanted to get rid of this line, but you actually added this line back." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I did do that." And he was obviously happy to stop it. So I think because he was being asked things that he'd not been asked before, things that he'd forgotten as well, and he's somebody that can just bring up memories like that. But he was like, "Oh yeah, I did do that," and "Oh, that rings a bell." And he was sort of loving the fact you could actually see him leaning back and taking a sip of his drink, getting a bit giddy when we were asking him certain things, feeding him some lines. But that was amazing as well to do him last, and being able to inject his interview into the documentary and have the main guy, and that was so much fun being able to do that.
I want to stick with this theme of fun, because one of the reasons why RoboCop was successful was because they had outstanding goons, right? The second episode of RoboDoc details the goons, each of the actors, which are like, those goons are on par with like Die Hard's goons. Those are really good, solid goons. So putting Clarence aside, which of you guys like wants to go first and like share who is your favorite RoboCop goon?
I don't think we've got a favorite, honestly. I think Calvin Young and Jesse Goins in particular, and they're in that documentary so much because they had so much to give. They're so fun and candid and open, and their memories were incredible too. And I remember Jesse at the very beginning of his interview being a bit nervous about swearing, and Chris and we're Brits, we swear at all times. We were like, "No, the films are fucking 18. You can say what you want." And that was it. They pretty much were like, right, and rubbing their hands together, and they just eyeballed. And it was, it was so much fun.
I've got a massive crush on Guy Crush on Ray Wise because of Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, my memory from the shoot as well was because, as we were saying something before, we came. The original intent of this documentary was, right, we want to do RoboCop. We love RoboCop.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do like a 90-minute, 2-hour piece, more in depth than anything that's come before. But that's what we'll go with. But we had about 16 people confirmed when we arrived in the States. When we came back home after about 3 weeks, we had 60 people filmed.
Wow.
So it was ever evolving. It was like, oh, we got this guy and that person knows that person. Oh my God, yeah. And the mayor knows the lieutenant. It was all just like, oh shit, get them in. And I think it was Gary approaching Ray Wise on Twitter. And as I said, huge Guy crush because of Twin Peaks. And he said, oh yeah, no, he can do it. He can be in this afternoon or something like that, wasn't it? Very, very short. And then just sitting outside the studio, like, he's not going to come. And you just see a sort of like black, I don't know what it was, saloon or something, you're like, oh my God, it's Ray Wise. And he was great. And all of them, I mean, Nancy Allen obviously alludes it, but yeah, they do not at all match their counterparts on film. You know, they're the most vicious, sadistic, fun-loving, absolutely, but the most heinous kind of individuals. But the reality is they're like some of the nicest people I think we've ever met. So it's a testament to them and their performances. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, I'd probably put that gang above Die Hard. I think, to be honest, through and through. You see that meme quite often, don't you, of like them back in the 80s and them at like a reunion or whatever.
Yes.
You know, so people know them, and they've got such great lines as well, like "bitches leave" and everything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Top blokes.
Joe Cox with that like kind of Joker laugh, right? Like they all get a moment to shine. They all have a distinct personality, and that's what makes them so good.
Yeah.
And so this idea of personality, though, I want to touch upon like the first episode of RoboDoc. You were talking about like the casting of RoboCop himself. And there was some really weird, strange names that I had never heard, from like Patrick Swayze to Steven Seagal to Eric Roberts. These are terrible choices. Like, I don't. But
An alternate reality, Steven Seagal as RoboCop. Jesus Christ, man.
I know. And I get it because it's like mid 80s or late 80s, right? So I get it, but I was like, oh, this is terrible. But I thought one name that was kind of decent was Christopher Reeve. I thought that could have been kind of interesting. I mean, like, Peter obviously was pitch perfect, and like the body language and everything that he did as RoboCop was fantastic. But like, do you think Christopher Reeve could have had the same type of kind of impact, I guess, as Peter?
Go on, Eastwood. Superman expert.
He's definitely got. Trust me, when I found that out, because that was another thing that wasn't common knowledge. And again, we had the production documents from the shoot, and Mark Hamill's in there. Yep, Steven Seagal's in there. If you actually pause on that frame when you see Steven Seagal and Patrick Swayze, you might be able to pick out Verhoeven's notes on Seagal, where he basically says in the audition on the document, "Not an actor," as his notes. And yeah, they're a lot of those guys were auditioned on tapes. Unfortunately, the tapes just don't exist. But Christopher Reeve, an offer was sent out to him. It was the same with Lance Henriksen. I think Christopher Reeve, me personally, because that is where it all started. I was shown RoboCop because I was obsessed with Superman and the first Tim Burton Batman when I was a kid. So Superman was everything when I was a little boy, and he had the jawline, he had a great voice. I think it would have had to make it somewhat a bit more friendly because he's not got that sort of intensity as well.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think you can compare Weller to anybody else. I think it's a miracle how incredibly good he is in that film. Like the voice, the mannerisms, the voice, that you don't question that it's a guy in a suit when you watch. You don't question that's a cyborg. Like you believe it. So I wouldn't have it any other way. But I sure would have loved to have seen Christopher Reeve's audition if he was to get that far and accept an offer.
Yeah. So, last question. All the documentaries you've made so far feature characters who end up becoming tattoos on people. People get tattoos of these characters. So, what is the next tattoo character you want to explore in documentary form? Are you allowed to talk about the next one?
We haven't.
Well, our next project isn't out yet. We've got one more in post-production at the moment, which is, again, I hope you ever get a Police Academy tattoo. I don't think you would, but that's our next one. But I think in terms of obviously our next project, we were in about I think we like the series format. I think we did say, me and Chris spoke about it last week, and I think we had some ideas about 3 or 4 months ago with Screambox. And I said to Chris, let's just get this out, and let's just get the physical release out, and obviously the 4-part out. Then let it settle, and then have a conversation then, because I think we're in a whirlwind at the moment. This has been such a stressful process.
Yeah.
That we need to sit back and we've got this other one, kind of bubbling away with another editor. And that'll eventually go back to Chris. It's hard because most of the franchises have been done now. So we want to do a different approach, really, I think, on our next project. Not so much franchise based, but more what we've kind of done with Robert, maybe, but more about different people, I suppose, just one person. That's cryptic enough, probably. It's hard to say.
You're talking about like the Robert Englund documentary, like just kind of focusing on his entire body of work more than just Freddy Krueger, obviously. Yeah,
so on obviously Hollywood Dreams, we focused just on his whole career, and again, I think that would have been nice as a series, and we weren't even thinking about series at the time. And I think I like the format of series. I think because it just allows us to put a lot more in. And I will say for the lads as well, there's like 6 or 7 bonus features for RoboDoc as well.
Mhm.
So there's even though there's like 4.5 hours of episodes, there's then bonus features for another hour. There's so much more we haven't used, and obviously will be in sequels. So I think, I'd like to do personally. I think I'd like to do something which is more overarching about a career or a genre or a character-driven thing, as opposed to one particular IP.
Mm-hmm.
Personally,
for me, again, if anyone's listening to this and they end up stealing it, I'm gonna recall them. But for me, it would be like Last Action Hero, another film I adore that like has not been touched. But are you going to get Arnold Schwarzenegger? Are you going to get John McTiernan, Charles Dance? Are you going to get those guys to talk about it? Probably not. If we could, that'd be a dream project, because again, that was another film that was a flop, but I think it's perfection. I love that film. Probably a bit too ahead of its time when it came out. And obviously, it was competing with Jurassic Park. But in terms of another IP, that would be a dream for me. And then anything James Cameron related, but he's another one that we're not gonna get sat down in France.
But Eastwood was told would never get Weller. We got him.
That's true.
So, we're told we'd never get Verhoeven. We got him. So we've always been told no, and we've always got him. So never say never.
That's exciting. Yeah. Eastwood, just kind of what you're saying, just to wrap up, like, it's funny because RoboDoc starts off talking about Blade Runner, and Blade Runner was a box office bomb at the time, but it's gone on to have this huge, like, influential career. Like, it's influenced sci-fi and, like, robots and all kinds of things. And I think it was just way too ahead of its time for, like, the audiences in the 80s, and they're like, we don't know what this is. This is weird. But the audience finally caught up to the movie.
Yeah, that's true. I think that industry professionals back in the day loved it and appreciated it for what it was. Like, obviously, Paul Verhoeven took inspiration from it. John Davidson, a lot of filmmakers did. But the audience, it was the timing of that, wasn't it, in '82, up against some of the big hitters. And that's another film that's one of my favorites. But when I first watched it and I was about 11, I just didn't get it. It went completely over my head. So when people ask, like, what's a film that you didn't like that you now love, I always say Blade Runner. I watched it far too young and it was just too artsy for me. And then I revisited it at college and was like, this is incredible. How did I dislike this the first time?
It's always Spielberg who runs these films, isn't it? E.T. with Blade Runner, Jurassic Park with Last Action Hero. It's always his films, his summer blockbusters that treads on things like The Thing and everything.
But it's because he makes them a little bit more mainstream, right? So... Blade Runner's a little bit of work. Even RoboCop, the way that you guys unpack RoboCop and RoboDoc, there's all this American criticism and Reaganomics and things like that going on. It's more than just like OCP putting a dead detective, basically, in a RoboCop suit of armor. You know what I mean? So, but congratulations, guys. It's fantastic. It's 4 parts, RoboDoc, and it's streaming on Screambox. So thank you guys so much for, like, hanging out and talking about RoboCop.
Thanks very much for having us, man.
Cheers, thank you.
Yo, I'm Sammy, and this is My Summer Lair. We've been talking RoboCop via RoboDoc, the creation of RoboCop, which is produced by Gary Smart. The 4-part docuseries is directed by Chris Griffiths and Eastwood Allen, who all previously collaborated on Pennywise, the story of it. The second episode of RoboDoc is outstanding, as that is the episode that focuses on the goons, including my favorite, Joe Cox. He's the one with he's the black dude with the beret and that Joker laugh. Does it hurt? Does it hurt? That guy has a terrible Joe Cox. Anyways, check it out on Screambox. It's a fantastic documentary. Actually, you can enjoy both docs, the RoboDoc and Pennywise. Both of them are on Screambox. In the interview, we talked about Steven Seagal reading for RoboCop. Some other actors that have come up who passed on RoboCop or just were not right for RoboCop. Actually, none of them were right for RoboCop. Ready for this list? Eric Roberts. Come on, man. Are we making like a Roger Corman movie here? Tom Berenger. Like, I guess maybe that's not that bad, but I don't think he can pull off like that humanity part. Do you know what I mean? Like, he can do the dirtiness, but not the humanity. Tommy Lee Jones. Nicolas Cage, Mark Hamill, Skywalker. No, man. Like, none of these are, like, working. Patrick Swayze. RoboCop's like the wind. No, man. these are terrible. Of course, these people were all big in the early to mid 80s, so obviously it made sense that they would either read or consider them. But none of like Craig T. Nelson, yeah, the dude from Poltergeist and Coach. Can you imagine Craig T. Nelson as RoboCop? Ed O'Neill, Al Bundy as RoboCop. RoboCop working in a shoe store. Yo, come on, man. this is pushing it a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like when you see the Eric Stoltz Back to the Future footage and you're like, it doesn't work. And they were wise and they recognized that it doesn't work. The one name on this list that kind of sort of works and I could allow it is Christopher Reeve. I think that could work. I think he could have done both, like recovered the humanity and been like violent with the gun. I think Christopher Reeve would have been an interesting choice. In the end, it's a moot point. They cast it well, and Weller just knocked it out of the park. The body language, the movements, the slowly regaining humanity, all those little things that make up RoboCop, Weller just knocked it out of the park. He did a fantastic job. Anyways, as we're wrapping up, let's keep talking about RoboCop and the movies we enjoy. Join the conversation happening at My Pal Sammy, a Substack newsletter. You can sign up at substack.com or go to mysummerlair.com/subscribe. The newsletter is funner than working for Dick Jones. Like Officer Murphy, My Pal Sammy is crafted to help you regain your humanity with intriguing recommendations and remarkable pop culture gems. My Prime Directive is to help you enjoy the best pop culture there is. So, let's have some fun. You can sign up at substack.com or go to mysummerlair.com/subscribe for the My Pal Sammy newsletter. Thank you for listening to me in an old Detroit world. RoboCop, yo.